Every attack, every calculated move, every perfectly timed disruption that left the entire WWE Universe searching for answers. It was never random. It was never impulsive. It was always them. It was always them. Paul Heyman, Brock Lesnar. The most dangerous management and muscle combination in the history of professional wrestling, pulling strings from the shadows while the entire WWE Universe looked everywhere else. The mystery is solved. And the truth is more terrifying than any theory any of us ever constructed. Suplex Rumble Nation, welcome back. I am your host, and tonight we are delivering the kind of deep dive breakdown that this channel exists to produce. Because what happened after Raw went off the air, the backstage conversations, the confirmed reports, the pieces of this puzzle finally locking into their permanent positions revealed something so significant and so perfectly constructed that I genuinely struggled to decide where to begin. Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar are the masterminds behind the Raw Mystery Man. Let that sentence exist in your mind for a moment. Let every previous attack replay through that lens. Let every carefully placed clue recontextualize itself through the knowledge that the two most dangerous individuals in WWE's recent history were architecting every single moment from the very beginning. Subscribe if you are new. Hit the notification bell. And drop a comment right now. Did you suspect Heyman and Lesnar? Because I want to know exactly how many members of Suplex Rumble Nation had this figured out before tonight. To truly understand how this conspiracy was constructed, to appreciate the architecture of what Paul Heyman built and Brock Lesnar enforced, we need to start with the most important foundational truth in all of professional wrestling management. Paul Heyman does not react. Paul Heyman anticipates. This is the defining characteristic of a man whose career in professional wrestling spans decades and encompasses roles as a performer, a manager, a promoter, a creative visionary, and the single most effective advocate any WWE superstar has ever had standing in their corner. Paul Heyman has been several steps ahead of every opponent, every authority figure, and every competing power structure for his entire professional life. Think about the pattern. Think about every major moment in Paul Heyman's managerial history where the full picture only became clear in retrospect. The alliances that seemed unlikely until their purpose was revealed. The betrayals that seemed shocking until the long game they served became visible. The moments where Heyman appeared to be on the losing side of a situation only for a subsequent development to reveal that the apparent loss was itself part of a larger strategy. Paul Heyman does not play chess. Paul Heyman is playing a game with dimensions that chess does not have sufficient pieces to represent. The construction of the Mystery Man operation, the selection of the right individual, the careful choreography of each attack, the deliberate misdirection that kept every investigator and every theorist looking in exactly the wrong direction bears every hallmark of Heyman's most sophisticated work. The patience required. The willingness to let the mystery breathe and build before the revelation. The understanding that the longer the question goes unanswered, the more devastating the answer becomes when it finally arrives. This was Paul Heyman at his absolute most dangerous. Not shouting, not performing, just thinking several moves ahead of everyone else and executing with the cold precision of a man who has been winning this specific kind of long game for his entire career. Every great strategic mind needs the right instrument to execute their vision. And in professional wrestling, there is no more effective, no more legitimate, no more genuinely terrifying instrument available than Brock Lesnar. The partnership between Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar is one of the most storied, most productive, and most consistently dominant pairings in WWE history. Their chemistry is not manufactured. Their dynamic is not performed. It is the genuine, deeply functional relationship between a man of extraordinary physical capability and a man of extraordinary intellectual capability, each making the other exponentially more dangerous than either would be operating independently. Brock Lesnar as the muscle behind the Mystery Man operation changes the entire threat assessment of every element of this conspiracy. Because Brock Lesnar's involvement means this was never just a storyline game. It was never just psychological warfare conducted at a safe distance through a proxy. Brock Lesnar's participation means genuine physical consequences were always the backstop. The Mystery Man operated with the knowledge and the confidence that if the operation ever required escalation beyond calculated disruption, the most legitimately dangerous performer in WWE history was available and willing to provide it. That backing changed what the Mystery Man could do. It changed how far the operation could push. It changed the entire risk calculation for every target, every authority figure, and every would-be investigator who got too close to the truth. The genius of using a mystery man as the visible agent of this conspiracy while Lesnar remained in the background is that it forced the WWE Universe and WWE's investigative resources to focus on the wrong person. The face everyone saw, the body everyone recognized from the attacks, while the true architect and his ultimate enforcer operated without scrutiny from a position of complete and deniable distance. Until now. Now that the full picture is revealed, let's do what Suplex Rumble does best and go back through the evidence with the clarity that only comes from knowing the answer. Because the clues were there. Every single one of them. Hidden in plain sight behind the protective coloring of a storyline that directed everyone's attention toward the most visible element, the Mystery Man himself, while the true masterminds remained invisible. Think about the timing of every attack. Each incident occurred at a moment that served a specific strategic purpose beyond simple disruption. Targets were weakened at precisely the moments when their weakness benefited a broader agenda. Championship opportunities were complicated. Alliances were stressed at their most vulnerable points. Feuds were inflamed in directions that served someone's interests while appearing to serve nobody's. The fingerprints of sophisticated management thinking are all over those timing choices. Random attackers do not demonstrate that level of strategic calendaring, but Paul Heyman, who has spent decades understanding exactly when to apply pressure and when to allow situations to breathe, absolutely does. Think about the targets. Who was attacked and who was conspicuously left alone? The pattern, viewed through the Heyman and Lesnar lens, tells a story about which roster members represented threats to a long-term plan and which were irrelevant to it. Every target connects to an agenda. Every person left untouched connects to the same agenda from the opposite direction. Think about the resources available to the mystery man, the access, the insider knowledge of Raw's production schedule and backstage geography, the ability to appear and disappear with a consistency that suggested institutional knowledge of how Monday Night Raw operates from the inside. Paul Heyman has that knowledge. Brock Lesnar has that access. And together they had every resource necessary to construct and execute this operation without a single detectable fingerprint until the very end. The clues were always there. And in retrospect, they pointed here all along. The confirmation that Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar were behind the Mystery Man operation did not arrive quietly. It detonated across the WWE Universe like a depth charge, and the aftershocks are still being felt across every major storyline currently running on Monday Night Raw. The immediate response from WWE Authority was significant. When the masterminds behind a weeks-long conspiracy that affected multiple roster members and disrupted programming at the highest level are finally identified, consequences are not optional. They are mandatory. Nick Aldis and WWE management have a roster full of affected superstars who are owed accountability. And accountability in professional wrestling comes with specific, dramatic, televised currency. The roster's reaction was equally telling. The superstars who had been targeted, whose careers and storylines had been disrupted by the mystery man's calculated attacks, now have a specific target for their response. Not a mysterious, unidentified figure operating from the shadows, but Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar, two of the most well-known, most publicly visible, most accessible targets available on the WWE landscape. That shift from fighting a ghost to fighting the most recognizable conspiracy in WWE energizes every affected party in a fundamentally different way. You cannot confront a mystery. You absolutely can confront Paul Heyman standing at ringside with a microphone and Brock Lesnar standing behind him with 400 pounds of legitimate physical menace. The confrontations that are now inevitable between Heyman, Lesnar, the Mystery Man, and every roster member who was targeted during this operation represent a content goldmine for Monday Night Raw that will pay storytelling dividends for months. Here is the question that the revelation raises immediately, and it is a question whose answer fundamentally shapes where this story goes next. Was the Mystery Man a willing partner in Heyman and Lesnar's conspiracy? Or were they a puppet manipulated by the most sophisticated management mind in wrestling history into executing an agenda that served interests beyond their own? This distinction matters enormously from a storytelling perspective, because a willing partner creates one kind of story, a unified, three-headed operation that the Raw roster must now confront as a coordinated threat. But a manipulated puppet creates something potentially even more explosive, a mystery man who discovers the full extent of how they were used and responds with the kind of personal fury that only genuine betrayal can generate. Paul Heyman's history suggests that the line between partner and puppet is rarely as clear as either party believes it to be. Heyman has always been the most important person in any alliance he is part of, even when the alliance appears to be built around someone else's physical capabilities. The partnerships that seemed most equal in Heyman's career always eventually revealed themselves to have a clear power dynamic operating beneath the surface. Whether the mystery man understood the full architecture of what they were part of, or whether they believed they were operating independently while actually executing someone else's vision, is a question whose answer will define this character's trajectory for the remainder of 2026. And that question, unresolved, simmering, about to boil, is the most compelling internal tension in the entire Raw storyline landscape right now. Prediction time. Suplex Rumble Nation. This is the big one. Scorecards out. Prediction 1. Paul Heyman cuts the promo of 2026. Within the next 2 Raw episodes, Paul Heyman addresses the revelation directly and delivers a masterpiece of professional wrestling advocacy that simultaneously justifies the entire conspiracy, diminishes every complaint from the affected roster members, and elevates Brock Lesnar to a level of threat that makes WrestleMania 42 implications unavoidable. This promo trends worldwide. Immediately. Prediction 2. The Mystery Man turns on Heyman and Lesnar. The puppet discovers the strings. Within the next month, the Mystery Man, now understanding the full extent of how they were used, confronts Paul Heyman in a segment that produces one of the most dramatically charged face-to-face confrontations Raw has seen all year. Heyman's reaction to being confronted by the person he manipulated will be must-see television. Prediction 3: a triple threat of consequences. The three roster members most significantly impacted by the Mystery Man's attacks converge into a unified response force against Heyman and Lesnar. The alliance formed by shared grievance becomes one of Raw's most compelling multi-person storylines and eventually produces a match that puts multiple championship and career implications on the line simultaneously. Prediction 4: WrestleMania 42 main event implications. Brock Lesnar's confirmed involvement in the conspiracy combined with the already escalating Obafemi challenge and other ongoing programs creates a WrestleMania 42 card that features Lesnar in the most high-stakes, most emotionally loaded position he has occupied at the grandest stage in years. My boldest call of the week: Paul Heyman's revelation as Mastermind is not the end of his 2026 story arc. It is the beginning of his most dangerous and most narratively complex chapter since the peak of his most celebrated WWE management work. By WrestleMania 42, Heyman will have made moves that nobody, not the roster, not WWE management, and not Suplex Rumble Nation saw coming. Even now, even after everything we know. Because that is what Paul Heyman does. He is always thinking further ahead than you think he is. Tone becomes thoughtful, passionate, community-focused. Professional wrestling's greatest gift to its most dedicated fans is the long game. The story that unfolds across weeks and months and builds to a revelation that makes everything that came before it click into perfect, satisfying focus. The mystery that rewards patience. The conspiracy that validates careful attention. The moment where the architect steps out of the shadows and you realize with a mixture of shock and admiration exactly how thoroughly you were outplayed. Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar as the masterminds behind the Raw Mystery Man is that moment. The long game revealed. The architecture exposed. And the truly terrifying realization that for all the satisfaction of knowing the truth, Heyman and Lesnar are not finished. They never are. The exposure of one plan simply means the next plan, already constructed, already several steps ahead, is now operational. That is the most frightening thing about Paul Heyman. He plans for being caught. Suplex Rumble Nation, this community has been all in on this mystery from the beginning. Your theories, your analysis, your passion in the comments has made covering this storyline one of the most genuinely exciting things we have done on this channel. And we are nowhere near done. Drop everything in the comments. Did you call Heyman and Lesnar? What is your theory about the Mystery Man's level of willing participation? What move do you think Heyman makes next? Every comment gets read. Every theory gets considered. This community is the sharpest wrestling mind collective on YouTube, and I genuinely mean that. Like this video. Share it with every wrestling fan who has been following this mystery. Subscribe to Suplex Rumble because this story is entering its most dangerous chapter and you do not want to miss a single breakdown. Until next time, Suplex Rumble Nation, stay passionate, stay suspicious, and always remember, when Paul Heyman is in the room, nobody is ever as safe as